I want to know everything there is to know about you.
I am going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
It was a paradise. And then a serpent came into that garden.
For God's sakes, Felicia, would you stop? Please, stop.
Oh, Clyde. I have nothing against a good fuck. But there is danger here. Somebody has to do something about it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Don't Know Her podcast. I'm Scott.
And I'm Michael.
And you join us once again to celebrate a star of the big screen, someone that we feel deserves a lot more love and attention than they get, and perhaps some better roles along the way, more roles, whatever it might be. But as part of this mini-series we're working on, we're sort of jumping away from the list that we add so many names to all the time and actually reaching out to see what others reckon we should be chatting about. And who would that be for this episode, Michael?
Veronica Cartwright.
Who? I'm joking.
Well, I feel very guilty about this. I cannot remember because I didn't write down and then I couldn't find the person who suggested Veronica Cartwright ages ago. Like, this might be at when we first started. And when I saw that name, thought, who? Like, who is this person? Googled her name, saw Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, The Children's Hour with Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. She is someone I know very well. Also, the cover of the Scissor Sisters' second album, Tada, features her as she did. She also features on the single cover for I Don't Feel Like Dancing. So I recognize this woman.
What, really?
Yeah, really. I don't tell lies here.
She's on the album cover of Tada with the
Yeah,
door.
Yeah, she's in the elevator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Jake Shears and all have taste.
Amazing.
So I was absolutely delighted when we finally came around to this mini-series. And I thought, finally, I can get my teeth stuck into her. Oh my
Get
God.
your teeth out of her.
Okay, I'm sorry. I feel like because of the films we're going to be talking about, she puts me in that mindset. Like, I haven't even mentioned Alien or Witches of Eastwick.
Yeah.
But I did it. I feel it's appropriate that I would get my teeth stuck into her.
Oh, me too. Thank goodness.
And did you know who she was?
No, not at all. When you said let's do Veronica Cartwright, I truly was who? But which case, brilliant. Sign me up. And yeah, when you look at the IMDb most known for, that is quite a lineup. So truly unignorable. If I'm saying who is that, and then seeing that she, like you said, is in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Alien, The Birds, Witches of Eastwick. How the heck am I not remembering who this person is? And when going back and rewatching one film in particular for me, going, how could I forget who you were?
Was that In the Bedroom where she's on screen as a counsellor?
Precisely. No, well, one thing that is truly the case for her, and why I certainly won't forget her now, and I'm surprised I would have in the first place, is that she really is someone who has racked up a lot of very iconic scenes within films in particular. It's not that she's just in these films. She is the centerpiece, or at least present in some of the most iconic scenes in these films and in cinema of all time. So truly someone who will not ever leave my head again now.
No, I am a little bit fascinated by her. Like, to think of somebody who starts off their career working with people like Alfred Hitchcock and Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine and William Wyler, and then gets to work with Nicole Kidman in The Invasion in 2007. She's working with all sorts of amazing people and is a thread to the history of American cinema. And you know what? That's giving her too much credit, but she is part of a heritage there, and that she's in some of my favorite scenes or some of the best scenes in cinema is really wonderful. Like so many of them.
Yeah. So many. I thought it was. So the scene I'm talking about is the cherry stones in The Witches of Eastwick. But then I thought, because that made me think, how could I forget her? And then she's also in the chest burster scene. She's in the...
In Alien,
in Alien.
Because the chest busting scene could be, if that was Showgirls or
really different.
First Wives Club or
very different idea
Baywatch.
of what... And as you pointed out to me earlier, she does play a stripper in a film called Sparkler. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
So maybe in that, she also is in a chest burster scene. The chest burster scene in Alien, though. The children's party in The Birds, very iconic.
Singing Scary Movie 2, Shake That Ass or Watch Yourself.
Of course, very iconic. Also... the scream in The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which I think is the iconic scene from that film, and she is very much part of it.
I have so much to say about that film in particular. Anyway. I won't say everything right now, but I agree. I think it is amazing that she's had such an imprint on cinema in that way. Also, her sister, Angela Cartwright, was one of the Von Trapp kids.
No.
She's Brigitte. Von Trapp, yeah. She was also in Lost in Space, the TV show. Like, so they are Hollywood royalty. Like, imagine being like, okay, you're working with Hitchcock, you're working with Robert Wise on The Sound of Music. What a household!
Yeah, my gosh, truly.
And we'll get into that. I can give more information of how that came to be. But she, even if she didn't make any other iconic films, she would always be remembered as a sort of scream queen in a way, in the best sense, not running upstairs or being chased, but literally screaming in the face of really horrific things, and most of the time having more agency than most women do in those sorts of stories. As you'll see, there is also a thread where her characters perhaps don't survive most of the time, which is a shame. But she's really iconic, I think it is. She's really special. So if you do remember messaging us on social media and you're still on social media, let us know who you are, because we owe you a big thank you. We're so glad.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to go and do an overview of her career. And to be honest, I found it so funny how many of the films I'd already seen of hers. I'm assuming you're the same.
Yeah.
And yet I wouldn't have been able to pick her up in a lineup. Pick her out. Pick her out.
She's very, very large.
Apparently grammar's really important, and the way you use words have a very different meaning. I'm not going to pick up Veronica Cartwright in any sense of the word.
Oh, but you couldn't pick her out either.
I could, but now I can.
Yes, okay, good.
So let's start at the very beginning. To quote her sister's iconic film. Veronica was born on the 20th of April, 1949, in Bristol. So
what?
It's like the opposite of what we had with Jennifer Ely.
Bristol, as in the UK?
It's in the UK, yeah. So they moved herself and her family when they were very young and went to LA. Basically, the parents wanted more opportunities for themselves as a family and obviously the children. In LA, apparently, this is how Angela and Veronica get into stardom. Their landlady suggests to their mother that one way of finding new friends and socializing and having a new network is by getting the kids into modeling, like kid modeling.
Naturally.
Yeah,
That's why I suffered when I was young.
Exactly. And she clearly, they both do very well. Veronica is apparently known as a cornflakes girl. She also advertised for Rice Krispies, and makes her big screen debut in 1958's In Love and War in an uncredited role as Robert Wagner's sister. And listening to her talk about that is really fun. Like she found it so glamorous. Like Robert Wagner had just married Natalie Wood, and Natalie Wood, who was a huge star of the time, she was fascinated by and found it so glamorous. So clearly felt at ease and home at film sets. She makes her TV debut in 1959 in Zane Grey Theatre in an episode that guest starred Barbara Stanwyck.
Oh.
Again, yeah, she's getting these
Yeah.
big names early on. She talks about how she was fascinated because in one sequence, Barbara Stanwyck is bleeding for some reason, and they poured melted Hershey chocolate on her as an effect, and she found that fascinating. Which is kind of cute little story. And then she has a repeated role in a TV hit called Leave It to Beaver from 1959 to 1961. Get your mind out of the gutter, Scott. She was literally 10 years of age or something. Can't do maths. If I could, she was 10 years, 10 to 13. But in 1961, she makes a huge imprint on film in The Children's Hour, which is a Lillian Hellman play directed by William Wyler and starring Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine. Also has Faye Bainter. Is that how you say her name? Bainter, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
Love Faye Bainter.
Yeah.
It is a really fascinating film and story. I've actually seen the play. They did it in the West End with Elizabeth Moss, Keira Knightley, and Ellen Burstyn.
Whoa, really?
And yeah, it was really good. And whoever played the key girl, Mary, was so good as well.
Okay.
But the film adaptation is as faithful as it could be at a time in Hollywood that didn't deal with homosexuality maybe in the most open way. But it is a really striking film. And so it centers around in a school, and there's two female teachers, played by Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine, are very close. And Audrey Hepburn is in a relationship with James Garner, but Shirley MacLaine's character may or may not. I feel like at the beginning anyway, it's a bit more, mysterious, has feelings towards Audrey Hepburn. Then Veronica's character overhears a conversation, tells another child of the school, and basically there's whispers that there's lesbians. Sorry, I'm laughing because it's actually it's a really sad story.
Mary has told her grandmother that certain things at school have been puzzling you girls. You in particular.
Arithmetic puzzles me. I guess I'm just not very good at it.
No, that's not what she meant. Mary said that you told her that you saw certain things happen between Miss Dobie and myself late at night. That once when the door was open, you saw us together in my room.
Oh, Miss Wright, I didn't. I never said any such thing.
Mary!
Oh, yes, you did too.
It's aged for many reasons, particularly the ending, but it's still fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a fascinating movie. All the performances are so good in it. I think it's a really well done film of its time. Interestingly, Audrey Hepburn has talked about it, and this is actually in The Celluloid Closet, the documentary, which focuses on this film a bit. She talks about how herself and Shirley MacLaine never once talked about the sexuality in it. So it was like an unspoken thing in this movie that there was a lesbian homosexuality storyline, which just reflects the time as it was in. But yeah, I think it's really terrific, and I think Veronica, although I kind of misplaced her as the lead kid who really messes things up, she still is terrific, and her face, and you can tell, as everyone who's been a child has been involved in some sort of gossiping, not realizing the implications of things, and this film kind of draws it out to its most dramatic conclusions. Have you seen it or rewatched it for this?
This was the first time I watched The Children's Hour, and I was very taken with it. I completely agree with you around things having aged, perhaps, or at least you would take a different approach, I think, to this kind of storytelling now. I reckon with that in mind, an interesting double feature to do contemporary and old school would be with last year's Blue Jean, which also centres on a lesbian school teacher who gets found out by a pupil. So a very similar thread going on there. But
and we should say, just because it is topical, because so that film is based in Margaret Thatcher's UK, where it's illegal to talk about sexuality, and now we're living in a country, the UK again, where they're introducing laws around gender and communication, and it is so. Yeah, you're right. I take back what I said about it being aged that way. The only thing is the very ending, but it's just frustrating. I think films like that really frustrate me because it seems so old-fashioned, but it's not, because that is exactly what would happen.
Well, exactly. That it was the time, and like you say, if they weren't even talking about it on set that it was part of this story, then sure, it's reflective of a time where it would have been absolutely against any decency that this could happen and could exist and is right. So it does lead it to a dark path. But even with that in mind, I think the performances in it are terrific. Veronica is really super committed, a lot going on, and just really delivering vulnerability in spades against this other child character who is the sort of polar opposite of her.
She's a bitch. We can
She's
say
an
that.
absolute terror. Shirley MacLaine, a forever favourite of mine, is superb. Audrey Hepburn is really, really great.
Yeah.
I think they use her perfectly in this, because Audrey Hepburn has become so well known for things like Breakfast at Tiffany's, for good or for bad. But this is where you're really seeing her used at her best, in that she is playing a fairly reserved character, more reserved than Shirley MacLaine's character, certainly, more buttoned up. But there's still so much going on, and she's playing that very, very well. So it's very thoughtful. I think it's a really interesting time capsule piece. So I think it is still important to look at queer stories that were made in this case, 1961. And I'm very, very glad I've seen it.
Yeah, and I do recommend it.
Definitely.
Just for so many reasons, but just to reflect, I think. And you're right, Blue Jean is an amazing movie.
Yeah,
if we're
totally.
talking about, exploring the same themes, but for a more contemporary audience, Blue Jean, which is available on BFI Player, and I'm sure other places, terrific film.
Yeah.
So we weren't alone in thinking that Children's Hour was good and Veronica was great in it, because Alfred Hitchcock also watched it, and from that hired Veronica for The Birds.
Wonderful.
Which is her next film in 1963. So The Birds, I feel like this can't be, but I was going to say this might be one of the most iconic films we've ever done, so it feels a bit redundant for me to even explain what the story is, but perhaps not.
You will know, you never know.
But it is a horror movie, essentially, thriller film about Melanie, played by Tippi Hedren, who flirts with a guy. Okay, now this is redundant explanation for the story, but she does. She flirts with a guy, Rod Taylor, very handsome man, and follows him to his hometown, and then as she gets to meet, his mother, played by Jessica Tandy, and also his sister, played by Veronica, things aren't all as they seem, because birds suddenly are attacking them, which starts off with her on a boat, like a little dinghy boat, being hit by a seagull. Then birds coming out of a chimney, her being stuck in a telephone box. Mm-hmm. An amazing sequence, which I think is up there with any of the greatest sequences in any film, about Tippi Hedren waiting for Veronica outside her school as the birds keep gathering and then attack. It is terrific. It's a terrific film. My main memory is my mother had seen it somehow as a child and was scared of birds, to the point we'd go to, when you go on holidays and you go through cages and birds, you have bird feed and stuff. We would not do that. My mum would not do that.
Wow.
Really didn't like birds, based on this film, and you can see why. And because of the time it was made, there are special effects, but there also are real birds attacking these people. So when Veronica talks about filming it, she says, Hitchcock was lovely. Hitch, of course, she calls him. He was lovely. He gave me this for my birthday because she turned 13 on set. La 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 la. But she also talks about, literal birds flying towards them and hurting them. And also talks about him making jokes that she didn't understand. And when she talked to her parents afterwards, they'd be like, don't you be listening to that.
Oh.
So you can imagine what the set would have been like, but what an iconic film!
Oh, truly, yeah.
And yeah, I've nothing else to say about it apart from I really recommend it. Nothing, even if you feel like my description has spoiled things, I really don't think that is possible with this sort of movie, because even if you know all the things that are happening or going to happen, you cannot be robbed of like the joy of watching this story. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's one that seared itself into my head long before I'd even seen it, in that I remember sitting outside practicing not the birds didn't come get me.
Oh yeah, that's where I thought you were going with
But no, but it is like, but sitting outside and practicing the tenor horn, which I played for many years, and my brass teacher freaking out at the sight of birds, and then describing what the film was, and me being like, whoa, that's actually a film. So it sat in my head for a long time, and then I eventually watched it, and it only heightened the imagery because some of the scenes and images that you've even described are so potent that you can't shake them. The birds on the climbing frames in particular, it is incredible. Even though perhaps it would lend itself to parody and things now because of the nature of it. But must remind you that in 1963, this was nominated for Best Visual Effects at the Oscars. So at one point in time, truly was state of the art. But in some cases, as I've just learned, they were using real birds, so not effects at all.
Tippi Hedren goes into more detail. I think she was treated worse, who plays the lead character, who, people will know either Melanie Griffith or Dakota Johnson, who are her daughter and her granddaughter. But yeah, it's pretty awful. Like, I think it sounds pretty hard going, that set.
Yeah.
And
what a film.
Yeah, what a film. And I feel like, as a queer person, I couldn't talk about the birds and not shout out about Suzanne Pleshette, is that how you say her name? Who plays Annie, who's the ex-girlfriend of Rod Taylor and is the teacher of Kathy, who's Veronica's character, in the school. Because she's this woman who has like a chip on her shoulder. She has a lot of interesting things going on. Like, looking at sexuality and all that sort of thing is really interesting with her. She's basically kind of a spinster in this town who's also loved and lost, but isn't vengeful of this new woman that's come on the scene. I love Annie. As a kid, I think that's the sort of, like the Baroness, if you're in The Sound of Music. Like, they're the characters I was drawn to. Read into that as you will.
Spinster.
But, yeah, spinster's a harsh word, but I feel like that is... I know nobody would have said that in the film. She's a very young woman in it.
Yeah, no, she's gorgeous. She is the one with the very dark hair.
Yeah, well, I feel like that. Yeah, so we do go back to like a bog standard sort of blonde woman, dark-haired woman, old lady. Then Jessica Tandy, who's playing way beyond her youth, or I believe so, unless she's been an old woman her whole life. Anyway, great cast, great movie, and another iconic thing for her belt.
I mean, amazing. If you haven't seen that film, do yourself a favor and watch it.
And this is where Veronica loses out on an iconic role in The Sound of Music. So she did actually audition to be in The Sound of Music as another one of the siblings. She doesn't get it. But she does go to the film shoot. So she's there in Austria with the rest of them, getting lessons, and I'm sure that was really fun. And she comes back to America to do 37 episodes of a TV show called Daniel Boone, which was very successful. And then she kind of stays in TV for a bit, doing things like Who Has Seen the Wind, Family Affair, and Mod Squad. She talks about this time as being a bit dry because she was neither a kid anymore, like being in her late teens, but she wasn't an adult. This changes in the mid-70s, where she has Inserts, Going South, and The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which again, as you've mentioned, another iconic film. The Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a remake of the 1956 film, and it's directed by Philip Kaufman. It also, I guess the lead actors in it are Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Jeff Goldblum, and Veronica. And it follows a world where body snatchers are invading us. And it is, I'd never seen it before. And I expected it to be a silly kind of B-movie style film, which I guess it kind of is. But it felt really like, it felt very much like it could happen. Like, I was watching it hooked.
Yeah.
Like, I thought this really could happen. These characters felt real. Like, this scenario felt real, that certain people knew more information than others. You know, there's class structures and whatever in society, and that there was a satisfaction? Of course. There is like a satisfying outcome to people that can still have control, as long as, you know, they're not fucked over. They don't mind if, you know, the middle classes or the lower classes or whatever are taken over. I found it really hypnotic, and I thought, like, so Veronica arrives kind of, the film has had I don't know now, this is how much I enjoyed the movie, I couldn't tell you at what point, but the first act has happened. Veronica comes in with Jeff Goldblum, and they're going to help Donald Sutherland and Brooke figure things out. She does a lot of screaming in this film when she's realizing, you know, how the body snatchers operate, because they basically like create a replica of yourself while you're asleep. It's really quite disturbing.
Yeah.
And she screams a lot at that sequence where they realize what's going on.
What the hell is it?
Keep calm, Nancy. Keep calm.
Is it contagious?
Any of your customers seen this?
No.
It'd ruin us. It's all we need.
Look, I am calling the police.
No, don't do that.
Why?
Nancy, don't. Because I think Jack is right. Not immature, exactly. He's got an adult face.
It's a monster. It's got hair all over it.
There's a lot of running around. Will say the thing about this movie is I'm not sure they know what to do with the women, because like Jeff Goldblum goes off to do something and to distract a group of people, and Veronica's character just runs after him. Like, and there's no real reason for that, you know.
Back.
And you know, Brooke Adams isn't treated much better. Let's say she's naked for reasons unknown to me when we've not seen anyone naked, but she's a beautiful young woman, so I assume that's why.
That'll be the reason.
But have you seen it before?
Yes, I watched this film, another of many, when I was far too young, and unfortunately, and I'm sad I haven't now rewatched it for the purpose of this, there are scenes and images which are fixed in my head. Because I watched it around the same time, I would have watched things like The Shining for the first time. I think I went through a phase of trying to catch up on sort of classic horror thriller type films. So I must go back and watch it again. I do remember, even as a kid, thinking it was quite magnetic and strange. But maybe now, like you, I'd find it all too real or something, and even more uncomfortable.
There was something about COVID and it, like the way it reacted to COVID, that made me really surprised. Like, I put it on, I had just watched something else, I can't remember now, and I was like, oh, you know what, I'll watch a bit of this as I have the projector up, and my partner wasn't around, and what else would I be doing? And then I sat there watching the whole thing. In fact, my partner came back from whatever he was doing, and he watched the last half of it and was as hooked as I was.
Amazing.
And thankfully, and that's why I'm not going to say anything about the ending here, but I never saw this ending before. Or maybe I've seen it out of context. I just didn't clock what it was. And oh my Lord, was I like almost screaming along with the film.
Wow.
In absolute joy or horror, whatever way. If anyone's seen it, you'll understand why I would have reacted like that. And Veronica is so integral to that ending. And so her face in that sequence will forever be burnt in my head for that, as among everything else. So yeah, I'm so glad to have watched it. I would put it up there with one of the I may never have seen this film if it wasn't for this podcast. So I'm so grateful that we do this podcast so I get to watch films like that.
Perfect. Win. And I'm hoping that other people feel the same way.
Yes. But I think more people will have definitely seen Alien, which comes very quickly afterwards in 1979, where she plays Joan Lampert. Lampert, I nearly called her. No idea. Lampert, I'm going to say. So Ridley Scott's horror sci-fi film. We came together to watch it, as we don't really do that often for the podcast. I don't know why we don't do that.
Oh.
But I'm really glad that's a film to watch with a group of people.
Yes, it's definitely a film worth watching in a group. I don't know if we even intended on it. I think it was an accident. It was sort of pre-deciding or fixing on Veronica, or it was kind of straddling the line. But Alien, again, feels unlikely, but if you're not familiar with or haven't seen, it is about and this is where I'm going to end up butchering it, because the details probably escape me a little more than the plot and imagery, but the crew of I think it's like a commercial spacecraft, are out in space. They touch down somewhere, and things get a little bit strange, and they discover when back on board the spacecraft that they've been joined by extraterrestrial visitor. And it wreaks havoc in many, many ways, in many iconic moments. If you haven't seen Alien, I'm sure you are familiar with what the alien looks like. Best design of a movie monster ever, in my opinion, potentially, because it is so, just that head and the mouth and its size, just everything about it is, at that time, it certainly felt quite unique. It was sort of straddling the line between monster and machine in a very strange way.
Yeah, the design is absolutely amazing. I'm rewatching it now and thinking of how it was shot and lit and framed is so impressive.
Yeah, everything about it. The production design on this, in certain scenes in particular, is mind-bogglingly good, and made in 1979, elements of it could have been made yesterday. It looks perfect in so many ways. The cast of this ship includes Sigourney Weaver, Tom Skerritt, John Hurt, Harry Dean Stanton,
Bilbo Baggins
himself, Ian Holm, and of course Veronica. And am I missing anyone else? Oh yes, Yaphet Kotto, who plays Parker. Yes.
The voice.
No, they're all in it, and then there is the voice of the alien, and then Helen Horton, who plays. Oh yes, the voice of Mother, because Mother is the name of the robot which controls the ship. So Helen Horton and Balaji Badejo. So we can say everyone in the cast then. And what a cast they are.
Yeah, it's a real chamber piece of a film. It's really great. And the way that they build suspense is incredible. And Veronica, she is the most sensible of that crew. You know, people could read that, and I guess they wouldn't be incorrect as a hysterical woman. But I read that more as like somebody who clearly understands what's at stake and what they should be doing about it in a rational way. Do you know? She does speak a lot of sense, trying to get off the ship, for instance.
We'll proceed with Dallas's plan.
What? And end up like the others? Oh, no, you're out of your mind.
You got a better idea?
Yes. I say that we abandon the ship. We get the shuttle and just get the hell out of here. We take our chances and just hope that somebody picks us up.
The shuttle won't take 4.
It is interesting. And the iconic scene where the chest busting, as you said. Now, I guess, I'm just repeating it because she's been asked this all the time, and probably most people know. But the cast didn't know that was what was going to happen. And her in particular, maybe where she was positioned or whatever, she gets a lot of blood splat on her. And her reaction is so huge. But in character, I would say. It's really good. That forever will be iconic.
Oh, my God.
She also, for better or for worse, has a because it's not a spoiler to say if you know the sequels and whatever, it's only Sigourney Weaver that is in those sequels. So Veronica doesn't make it, but she does pretty well.
She does well compared to many of them,
But
yes.
her death scene is something like, for instance, I would have, when I was doing my master's in film, we looked at that and why, everyone else died in a very sort of matter-of-fact sort of way. She died in a slow sort of, like, his tentacle or tail is creeping up between her legs.
Yeah.
Which Ridley Scott, who directed it, and every people are talking about, like, we didn't have that much footage, we were trying to make it sinister. Like, they clearly didn't think about it, but then, that's also, I would assume, clear that they're, an unconscious sort of decision-making there. We know for a fact a man wouldn't have been murdered that way by the alien.
Yeah.
Does the alien have a name? No. Ever since.
Just Alien.
Terrific movie. Like, that's like 4 for 4 right there in terms of great movies that Veronica's been in that I would recommend.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Alien is an all-timer. I think it would often top polls of the greatest horror films of all time, thrillers, whatever, however you want to frame it. I think it is a sort of classic horror in many ways. It is fantastic. Do you prefer this or Aliens?
Oh, it's funny. I think they're so different in many ways that I couldn't decide. I couldn't pick between them. That's hard. I do, like, if I was to pick one to just rewatch, well, I've also just watched Alien, but I would pick Aliens. I think they, back away from her, you bitch.
Yeah.
And things like that, like this very fun, slightly campy Ripley with the alien is really interesting to me. But I think they're both brilliant, and I certainly would choose them over any of the others. Although I like Prometheus. I don't remember. I've seen the Winona Ryder one, but I can't really remember. When it becomes like a franchise like that, I get a little bit lost in the weeds. But
yeah,
those first two in particular I really liked.
Yes, the last ones haven't done anything for me, sadly. But yeah, I agree that they're both great, both very different. I think Aliens stands up, though, as a real game changer in cinema. I think Aliens is an incredible action film and, will have had its own major impacts. But Alien has created so much by being as absolutely brilliant as it is. It is unquestionably brilliant.
Yeah, and I would, out of those two films, Alien is a film I could watch again and again and get more information about filmmaking and an education. Yeah. Aliens is terrific, but it isn't a go-to film for that sort of reason. So I'll say Alien. I mean, I'm just doing that because you've lured me into it, but But this seems wild to me. The dry kind of patch, let's say, that Veronica talked about before, happens again. So she has TV films, The Black Pill and Prime Suspect in 1981 and 1982. She does have the film The Right Stuff in 1983, which is a success and people celebrate. But she's not the lead in that. Like, she is not... In my mind, she should be getting way more than she is getting. I guess what we didn't say about Alien is that she was originally supposed to be Ripley, but they swapped roles just before filming.
Wow.
So who knows what the trajectory of Alien would be, because Sigourney Weaver is such a great fit. But what a huge difference in so many ways to the careers of lots of people involved there.
Yeah.
But we don't really get her in a major film until the Flight of the Navigator in 1986, and then Wisdom and the Witches of Eastwick in 1987.
Ooh,
and at least with the Witches of Eastwick, she gets not a lead role, but the biggest supporting role, or the most impactful supporting role within that film. So this is George Miller's campy, dark comedy, almost sci-fi fantasy film, starring Cher, Susan Sarandon, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Jack Nicholson.
I think the name will be familiar to a lot of people. I agree that I assume more people will be familiar with the iconography of, say, the poster and the cast rather than having sat down and watched it. Because you're right, it is a very odd film. It's one that is I've always held very fondly. I was saying to you earlier, my quiz team with my home friends, one of them, friend of the podcast, Daniel, and our friend Emma, we were known as the Bitches.
Is Emma not a friend
not
of the podcast?
Not a friend of the podcast in as close a way just yet as Daniel. But we were known as the Bitches of Eastwick at our local film quiz, and very good we were too. And that is because it's a trio of wonderful people. How could we not want to emulate Susan Sarandon, Cher, and Michelle Pfeiffer? It's sitting down and watching it now. It is there's things about it which are very nostalgic and quite irresistible in the way that many George Miller films are, with that offbeat nature. Be that, as we've seen in Mad Max or Babe or Happy Feet or whatever it might be from his peculiar filmography. But there is something about sort of the placement and depiction of sexuality. The character that Veronica plays in particular is a really unusual one. I had forgotten just how significant she was, and in that she appears at the very beginning singing the national anthem, and then she's the one sort of catching on to who this man is who's come into town, and for that, has an unfortunate path.
I have a feeling, Clyde. The most terrible feeling. Something's happening, Clyde. Something evil.
And we should say that this man who's come into town has been like a spell, essentially, by the trio of... I was going to say Oscar winners. Michelle does not have an Oscar winner. But a trio of movie legends saying, I want a man who does this. I want his dick to curve this way. I want him to do whatever. And then Jack Nicholson appears, which is not what anyone would hope.
Yeah.
But, I mean, sorry.
In this case, no. Then that's how it's certainly
I feel like
to be.
I know. That's what I think the outset of this movie is a bit odd for that reason. Maybe even a little. Anyway, because Bill Murray was going to play it as the part first. I was like, these two men. I just think clearly a straight man was behind this story. Anyway, because it's their fantasy that they would be appealing to all sorts of women, particularly people like Cher.
But he is meant to be gross, though. When he turns up, he is in his first instance of us seeing him. He's snoring very loudly. He's gross. He's choking.
He's interrupting Susan Sarandon on her cello or whatever it is.
And even Cher, until she sort of changes her mind, is literally saying, like, you are disgusting and everything about you repulses me. I've never seen more things about a man I dislike. But yes, then.
But I think that's my point, because that's what men want to be that attractive. Like they want someone like Michelle Pfeiffer or Cher to think, oh, I'd never have you. But then all they have to do is pursue them in a very. I don't know if you'd call him aggressive, but it is in a way politely aggressive. You say that is not okay how he behaves around them. Till he gets his way, until they decide, actually, you're right, I do want to sleep with you. But the film then is just it's about kind of reclaiming that in a way then. Veronica's part has just become a bit like a comedy subplot to just kind of, for someone to tell you that the decadence of what these women and Jack Nicholson are doing is not okay by society standards. Which is why they probably get rid of her halfway through, because they don't know what else to do with her. But I like the movie. I love Veronica in it. I think Veronica is such a hoot. It's the sort of role where you're like, I wish this woman was given so many more opportunities to play these broad, comedic type characters.
Look around you. Look around you. You see what's happening. Right down in our very homes. You know who I'm talking about. You know what's going on in that house. There is vice, there's perversion, shamelessness.
All right.
Cavorting with that devil.
She's fine. She's okay.
No, drugs are this. Murder. Spanish flies, dildos, anal intercourse. Listen to me.
Sorry.
Commitment underlined 10 times. She's in a film with Susan Sarandon, Cher, and Michelle Pfeiffer, all at peak beauty, all being their brilliant selves, but she is the MVP probably, and that she is absolutely going for it in the best way, and it works so much better for her delivering what she needs to do to really bring that character to life, and then having what is maybe the single most iconic scene in the film is something happening to her. So yeah, she completely stands out in an amazing and iconic crowd of co-stars.
And her shouting whores repeatedly in church is amazing.
Yeah. What dreams are made of.
So I would recommend that if you just wanted a bit of an odd but fun sort of time. It's not, I wouldn't say it's satisfying, but I also wouldn't say it's not satisfying.
Yeah. Oh, no, I mean, I do really like it, but I think with a pinch of salt.
And no cherries.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for Susan Sarandon's hair in particular, maybe I'd think a lot less of it. But wow, her hair in this film.
Yeah, they're absolutely gorgeous. I wanted a film where like they got together and they explored their own sexualities without Jack Nicholson.
So say you're turning into him now, you perv.
Well, he probably. Oh, yeah. This is it. I mean, by all accounts, the filming of it was very intense, which George Miller seems to court. But Veronica does talk about Jack Nicholson being an absolute dream.
Well, there we go.
But I don't know if they had sex, and that's not our business, Scott. But again, this doesn't lead to anything. She does get a nomination for, I haven't written it down, but I think a Saturn Award or something along those lines. But like when I look at the films afterwards, like so, for instance, there's Man Trouble in '92. She has an uncredited role as Bag Lady in Speed. I just rewatched that and I don't remember. Do you remember Bag Lady? It's at the very beginning.
It's so wild that I can't either, which is so silly, thinking that we literally did just rewatch it. And I've seen Speed so many times. Bag Lady.
But I think she's just before Sandra gets on the bus, right? Anyway, sorry, Veronica, we failed you there. Then she was in Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh in '97. Sparkler, as you mentioned, playing a stripper in '97. In the Bedroom for a split second in 2002. Scary Movie 2 in 2001, where she does... she's playing Ellen Burstyn essentially in The Exorcist and is having like a sing-song singing like Hello Dolly downstairs.
Dolly'll never go away again.
Hey, do you guys know this one? Oh. Now this is the real shit. Watch yourself. Shake your ass. Show me what you're working with.
And then, as we were saying earlier, shake that ass. And then she makes, then her daughter comes down, who's like has the devil taken hold of her and it vomits and pees or whatever. And Veronica's like, "You stupid bitch," and makes her. Does she make her like lick the pee or something? Oh, it's disgusting. Yeah. But, you know, iconic in a very different way to maybe what we've described. Then there's also Just Married in 2003 and Kingsley in 2004. I feel like it's important to say that she was in a remake of The Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 2007.
Which you loved.
Sharing a scene with Nicole Kidman.
How long have I been coming here? 4 years. And I've had a cup of tea almost every time, haven't I?
Yeah, I suppose you have.
But I can't do it. I can't even drink this. That's how bad it's gotten.
And she talks about being asked to do this film because she was told like her character perhaps was still in the universe and still had something to say. But then I don't know if we've never talked about this film. Nobody talks about this film. It looks absolutely crap. Like it's as if like they misunderstood why the film originally was good, and just one, like, let's have action. Let's have lots of action. Let's have Nicole Kidman just, like, running around a city with Daniel Craig. And the scene is pretty rough. Like, it's Nicole Kidman that's rough in it. Veronica's really good. She's someone who's, like, her husband's one of these people, his body's been snatched, and she's trying to communicate with Nicole, and Nicole's checked out. I think this was a scene shot during reshoots. Like, this had a lot of problems.
Okay.
But just thought it was interesting. And it's probably one of the most high-profile films she's done recently, because she goes on to do films like The Yellow Wallpaper, The Odd Way Home, The Field, which is in 2019 with Barry Boswick. Is that from Rocky Horror Picture Show? Breaking Fast in 2020, which is a queer film. So she's an ally. I mean, clearly she's an ally, I assume. But that is a bit mad for someone whose career started the way it did. I will quote her. This is from 2011. And she says, and perhaps this is one of the reasons why her films haven't been as iconic, let's say, as they were before. She says, there is a group of women that get all of the roles, and it just doesn't seem fair when Susan Sarandon gets everything, and now she's willing to, do TV. I want to get offered those parts.
Oh.
We hate to see it and also love to. Susan Sarandon seems like an easy person to pick a fight with. And clearly something happened in Witches of Eastwick. If she's selecting Susan of all people to pick a fight with. So yeah, Susan Sarandon's the reason Veronica isn't in all those iconic Susan Sarandon projects she's been doing recently, like The Meddler, which I did love, but nobody's heard of, and so yeah, maybe that's why. Having said all that, people probably know her much better for, as I mentioned, Scissor Sisters album cover, if you can zoom into that, but also TV. She has had so many guest parts, frequent parts, cameos in TV shows from Baywatch, Chicago Hope, Will and Grace, Nip Tuck, Judging Amy, 6 Feet Under, Grey's Anatomy, Law and Order, and also she has 3 nominations for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama Series for ER and The X-Files. So that is not nothing.
No, and that is not nothing at all. That is a lot of iconic television work, and to be 3-time Emmy nominated for The X-Files.
Well, twice for The X-Files and once for ER, sorry.
Oh, right, okay, but still, surely that makes her a very familiar face to folk who were fans of those shows in particular.
Yeah, she wasn't in Murder, She Wrote, which I thought
we said we're not doing this. Okay, sorry, binning this episode.
Maybe she was and I just missed it. She'd be perfect after The Birds and all. I'd absolutely love it. I mean, sorry, I realised Murder, She Wrote was over. But we could. Oh, wasn't Octavia Spencer going to remount it? And do you remember all that? And Angela Lansbury was like, get the fuck away from me. Anyway, that may or may not be true, but I believe it is to be true. And also, people may have seen her on stage because she's done things such as Elektra, The Master Builder, and The Bat.
Was she playing the Bat?
Yeah, the titular role each time. Coming up, she does have The Vicar's Wife, How to Talk with Spirits, and The Ruse. None of which most people will watch, I'm afraid.
Okay, you can tell.
So let's round this off by reflecting on the highs, because it does sadly get to, it's not as high as it was at the start of her career. And what would you say is if you could recommend one movie to watch for Veronica, what would it be out of her career?
For Veronica, of what I have seen, then it is The Witches of Eastwick. Yeah. But it would be crazy to not be recommending all of the other films that we've spoken about too over Witches of Eastwick. But if it's for her, she is just having so much fun, and I think she's electrifyingly just exciting to watch in it. What about you?
I it is a tricky question, which is why I asked you. But I think the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but not because she's particularly giving anything that I would say is like so remarkable that you totally forget. Like there is one sequence in particular where it is iconic, but just because I think she's really showing a lot of different shades in that film. Just being the person she is, and that she is in the film throughout the whole movie, unlike many of the other characters. And it's very intense, but she knows what she's doing. And I still think it's very rare you have particularly a supporting female character in those sorts of movies that's not just yelling or, running into a wall or, this person has their shit together.
That's mean to talk about all of her other roles that way.
No, Alien, she has her shit together too. It's not her fault the alien found her.
But she still does a lot of shouting, running into things, probably.
Well, oh my God. Well, Witches of Eastwick, I will say, because when I put it on, I was like, I wonder if I'll enjoy this movie or whatever. And I was enjoying the first part. But when they can't remember what Jack Nicholson's character's name is. And Michelle Pfeiffer, as you can imagine, is wearing a beautiful pearl necklace. And they all remember her name, and without much reason, her pearl necklace, all the beads, all the pearls start falling. And where is Veronica? But by a very glamorous staircase. And she falls like she's in Looney Tunes down, and it is wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then the heap she's in at the bottom, she turns her head.
And she had they made a body double for her.
Wow.
Sorry, the body double's the wrong word. They made a mannequin. They made a body double. Now I'm confusing Body Snatchers with real life. Yeah, they apparently because her leg is twisted the wrong way and all.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, that is peak George Miller, that sort of cartoonishness is, great.
And to round all of this off, what would you love to see Veronica do in future?
I just went with the first thing that came to my head. And now this is an answer I could give for so many people we love. But for her, based on the first word that comes into my head and will do now when I think about her is committed. She gives it her all, but in the best way, and that's why it's not just committed for bad reasons. It's wonderful things happen. So when we get our next Knives Out film, I want Veronica to be front and center, and I also want it to be more folks around her age bracket in general. Icons, and she can be one of those.
I don't think that's far off. I imagine
Rian Johnson.
Yeah, and his partner is Katrina Longworth, who does the You Must Remember Me podcast.
Remember This podcast.
What did I say? Remember that?
Me.
Must remember me. That's just what I say to anybody because I'm so needy and dependent. You must remember me. Michael, enchanté. When we were in heaven last week, that's how I greeted most. And they're like, honestly, if I ever met you before, I don't have a clue who you are. Get away from me. Anyway, you must remember this. Which I said afterwards as I did my movements on the dance floor. Katrina Longworth, she loves film history, and you imagine someone like Veronica would be in her mind.
Yeah, she should cast the next one. Let Karina cast Knives Out 3, please.
Get Tippi Hedren into. Oh my God! You could
the
go
whole
wild.
of that family. Get them all in. Dakota, Melanie, and Tippi, and then Veronica. Sorted.
See it, say it, sorted. Mine, I've been so giddy about since I thought about it, and now we're recording, I feel like it's a bit underwhelming.
He's even twitching and fidgety.
I'm twitching. I can't believe it. So obviously Ridley Scott directed Alien. Ridley Scott is mounting his sequel to Gladiator. Oh. Why would Veronica not be part of this amazing cast of Barry Keoghan, Pedro Pascal, Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, and some other people I can't remember. She could be, I don't actually know the story, and I probably should have read that before. I'm sure there's a blurb or something. But could she not be his adoptive parent or a parental figure, and be involved in his life as he goes back to reclaim his father's, I don't know, status in the Colosseum. And like, so she can
Sure.
scream, she can be dramatic, she can wear fabulous robes,
Yeah.
have her hair did. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. Yes, and it would bring something for us when we go to watch the Gladiator sequel.
I think Pedro Pascal's thighs and Barry
I know there's
Keoghan
actually
and,
plenty of things in there that will be plenty enjoyable too.
I know, I love Gladiator.
I know. But
You know that I do.
The thought of it.
What? I can't wait.
Unappealing.
Denzel
I haven't
Washington
seen
in a
Ridley
toga?
Scott do. He has done interesting things recently, but nothing's struck real good with me in a long time of his.
Do you not remember when he saved cinema by replacing Kevin Spacey with Christopher Plummer?
I mean,
In a film like, what was that called? The Last Scandal or something?
no, All the Money in the World.
Yeah, All the Money in the World. Mm. Yeah, Ridley is not at his high point, but he's also has all the money in the world, so he can do whatever he likes. And yeah, this Gladiator, apparently they all wanted it, like Timothée Chalamet and
Oh wow, okay.
other people of that age bracket I can't think of.
Saying that, I did actually enjoy The Last Duel quite a bit, so maybe I'm being unfair and unkind.
Last Duel.
The Last Duel.
Last Duel. Well, I liked some of The Last Duel.
I think that's also fair.
I don't need to see a story 3 times.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was a very important story that Ridley Scott had to tell about women and assault. Anyway, we're going on too much. But Veronica, we love you and
Call us.
and yeah, like I feel really bad. I really want to watch that queer film you made with the really hot men. I know. I see. This is where I feel guilty. She's never. Anyone connected to her is going to listen to this podcast. But I feel bad saying like, she's not had an iconic film in ages.
Yeah, because some of these might be absolute bangers, and we've completely missed out by going for the iconics.
Yeah, but Breaking Fast, very attractive people. So maybe I'll watch that.
Perfect. Consider it done.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Scott. Where can people find us?
Under rocks or online.
Is that what we call Pedro Pascal's thighs now?
Yes. I mean, sure. But if you don't want to look there, you can grab us on Instagram, Twitter at Don't Know Her
_pod.
Or you can email us if you fancy at don'tknowherpod@gmail.com.
And please do rate, review us, share with anybody you think would enjoy us celebrating underappreciated icons of cinema. And yes, thank you all for listening so much. And thank you, Scott, again for just spending time with me.
Oh, thank you. That's adorable. Oh, well, until we get to do this again, which, won't be too long.
And we are picking up pace. I mean, that's the lie. I spoiled it. We're doing a man next. I'm really excited, and this is a really great shout. The next person.
Yeah, and quite a pivot. So join us.
And that's not a spoiler. We're not doing a ballerina or something.
No, I'm not that quick to think of puns like that.
All right. Until next time. See you later.
Bye.